Let's go. And do what we do best. Let's sparkle and kick some ass!
Demeter drew in a deep breath, and she watched the good Nymphians, their longtime allies, leave the teleportation chamber. And so began another final battle. This conflict wasn't the first one she'd ever been a part of, but by all that was holy, she hoped it would be her last. At least the last one fighting Nymphians. Protecting the world from the forces of evil was always something that teams of magical girls, magical boys, and magical non-binary persons did in the animes. And in the end, the good side always won. In those animated shows, there were always great costs and sacrifices. But by the ending minutes of the shows, they were usually happy endings. Would they, the Sparkle Guardians, have a happy ending? Demeter ran down the hall and she held her staff tightly. The sound of the others just behind her sent warm ripples within her. No matter how crazy this battle was going to get, she wasn't alone. She had her team, both her old team and her new one. The hallway they moved through was fairly wide, perhaps stretching 25 feet from wall to wall. When considering a Nymphian's size, the space would have been that much more accommodating. Demeter ran right at the intersection, and she pushed away any of her doubts, her concerns, and her sense of anxious urgency. A hard-to-maintain sense of stillness slowly filled up her insides. Further down the hall, a large group of wax minions stood in the middle of the corridor, waiting for them. And they weren't alone. 3 massive creatures made from stone and metal towered over the others, and they looked monstrous by design. Demeter stopped and then pointed her staff toward the now approaching horde of creatures.
Sparkle Guardians, go!
Demeter slammed the end of her staff on the ground, and a series of spiked and barbed vines burst up from the ground. They tangled and struck out at the minions with savage fury. Persephone, Hades, and Poseidon ran past her, while Boreas and Iris flew over her. As Persephone was the lightest and fastest, she reached the enemy first, and her vicious scythe cleaved into them. Poseidon stabbed enemies and then sent powerful streams of water into their bodies, creating more space for Hades to punch them in the faces. Every now and then, Iris swooped down and walloped wax figures in the heads, catching them off guard and knocking them off balance. One of the bulky monsters hopped forward with surprising speed and backhanded Hades. He screamed out and was sent into a wall with considerable force.
Bro! Oh, hell no! Take this, you big-ass piece of shit!
Poseidon ran forward and thrusted his trident into one of the creature's legs. The tips bounced off of the skin. Likewise, when Persephone slashed at it with her blade, the blade merely slid across its hardened armor. They both lunged back to avoid angry reprisals.
Whoa, these guys are tough.
Slowly, Hades got to his feet and dusted himself off.
I forgot what it was like to really take a hit.
That sounded loud. Are you okay?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm the toughest one of us all.
One of the taller monsters nearly swatted Boreas from the air. However, it stumbled back when a fireball struck it in the face. A small crack formed on its chin.
Great job, Hestia! Leave the big ones to us. Just clear out the rest.
Demeter willed her magic into her staff, and she jutted the rose headpiece toward one of the larger minions. Vines sprang from the walls and the ground and locked it in place. Hades, Persephone, and Poseidon dipped around and dodged the larger strikes of the massive creatures while dealing with the wax minions. Likewise, Boreas and Iris kept evading the swatting hands and focusing on the more numerous enemies on the ground. Zeus was the quicker of the ranged guardians, and they launched lightning bolts with rapid accuracy. When the lightning bolts struck, booming thunder echoed throughout the walls. Cracks formed up and down the face of the monster. To compound the effort, Hestia also focused his attacks on whichever one Zeus was blasting. The consecutive fireball forced the monster to stumble back again, and the damage became even more pronounced. The one whom Demeter had secured was not currently being attacked, and it pulled and protested against the strain. Faintly, she felt the tension of her magic through vibrations in the air, and so Demeter filled it with more magic. She rotated the staff in her grip as if screwing it in further, and more vines slithered out of the walls and floors.
Stay right there. You'll get your turn, don't you worry.
Broken and cleaved remains of the wax minions were all over the floor, and many of them had been squashed beneath the larger feet of the bigger creatures. One of the giant monsters went down due to its head splitting apart. When it fell, it crushed 3 of the wax figures beneath it. Immediately, Zeus and Hestia started hammering on the second one, who caught a stream of water in the eye. Poseidon, Hades, and Persephone cleared the last of the wax minions. As the engulfed creature was destroyed, Demeter eased her magic, and the plants rescinded once the third one was destroyed.
Great job, everyone. That was a good warm-up for what's to come. Hades, are you sure you're all right?
Yes, I'm fine. If it was anyone else who got smacked, yeah, they would be in some serious trouble. Those big ones are strong and hardy, most likely designed to deal with melee attackers. It's a good thing for Hestia and Zeus.
I bet we'll come up against more of them. Boreas, rather than little ones, can you create one larger tornado to maybe freeze one of them? If I had help with locking them down, we might be able to take them down more efficiently.
Yes, I believe I can do this.
Great. Going forward, let's have Hestia, Poseidon, and Persephone keep the front line, while Zeus, Boreas, and I can attack from a distance. If there's an opening, Hestia, you could also help with the fireballs. Iris, could you keep a little closer to us? While you helped a lot with strikes, one lucky blow could put you in a bad situation.
Yes, ma'am.
You also have the means of passing communication along, so we won't have to shout our plans. That won't tip off the enemy once we deal with the real struggles.
And where would you like me?
With Iris, we can keep in communication with you, even if we don't see where you are. As you are the best tactician among us, maybe you can maneuver behind the enemy and attack decisively.
Right, because of my invisibility. Okay, I'll do that. Look at you being an awesome leader.
Agreed.
It's almost as if all this Sparkle Guardian stuff is refining skills you can use in your career.
Yeah. Let's go forward and be ready. No doubt it's going to be tougher.
They started running again, and they came to a 4-way intersection where 4 of the larger creatures were positioned. There was also a dozen lacquered wooden figures, all with their arms held out open to bar passage. Courtesy of Iris, Boreas' thoughts reverberated within Demeter's mind.
Let me try and handle these guys. Maybe I can freeze all of them. Hestia, place up a shield, please.
Boreas flew out in front of the group, and a second later, Hestia raised a magic shield. It arced a little, but for the most part cut off the Sparkle Guardians from the enemy. Boreas hovered in place, and a radiance shimmering began to sparkle on his skin.
This will be the perfect opportunity for me to harness all my power. We don't have to worry about property damage here.
Demeter licked her lips as she watched from behind the force field. The air already started to distort, and the wooden minions were being pulled slowly by the forces that Boreas had summoned. At the moment, the 4 giant creatures were unaffected, but they snarled a little. The wind grew faster, and the entire citadel began shaking with more and more force. Groaning sounds echoed on the wind, for even the metal of the walls were being tested. Layers of frost began coating the surfaces of the walls, ceilings, and floors, and the wax minions became swept up in the air, twirling about helplessly in the spiral of the singular tornado. Slowly, the giant creatures were being ever so slightly dragged toward the tornado as well. Their skin was also becoming ice-coated.
Wow, he's really putting a lot of magical energy into it. This whole place might come apart.
Hestia, how's your shield standing up?
Well, I can definitely feel the cold on the edge of my force field. It may not look like it, But the energy shield is made from magical fire. The temperature is sapping away the heat, and I'm having to put more magic into keeping the icy wind from getting to us.
Thank you. Keep it up.
The wind grew even swifter, and finally the giant creatures got swept up in the tornado. They twirled along with the wooden figures, smacked against the walls and one another. All of the bodies became encased in icy clumps. After many moments, the wind started to die down, and then it stopped altogether. The large chunks of ice with frozen bodies fell to the ground one by one. Boreas also started drifting to the ground, and he plopped on the icy floor. As soon as he did, he hopped up to his feet in a rapid display of panic.
Cold. Why is it so cold?
As soon as Hestia lowered the shield, Boreas jumped over to where it wasn't so frosted. He held his arms and shivered.
Whoa, you're walking. I guess you used all of your magic in that attack, huh?
Yeah, I kinda went overboard. I never noticed it, but subconsciously, I was weaving a pocket of air around me when I was flying, keeping it all in my body heat and protecting me from my own icy effects.
Ah, body temp regulation. Yeah, my powers sorta do the same sorts of things with the cold too. I'm sure that your magic will start to replenish.
Great job. Just stay put and let your magic come back to you. We can have the others go around and make sure all of the bad guys are dead.
Boreas sat down against the wall, and unsurprisingly, Iris sat with him to keep him company. The others, consisting of Hestia, Poseidon, Zeus, Hades, and Persephone, went around and they shattered the heads of the frozen minions, oftentimes at the necks. Demeter watched to the other side of the corridor, ready to plant grapple any other foes who dared to show their faces. It didn't take long for the others to destroy the encased minions, and by the time they were finished, Boreas was back to floating in the sky. Although he hung a little lower than normal, and he still had a sense of weariness in his face.
Until you're feeling better, stay with Iris and protect him with your ice tornadoes.
Right. Thank you for caring so much about me.
Of course. We're a team, and we have to look out for one another.
The Sparkle Guardians came to a large area, almost like a small reception hall. There were a couple of seated areas with couches and tables, a large fountain in the middle of the space, and a series of stairs leading up to doors that led elsewhere. There were Nymphians standing in front of the fountain. The one named Columbia was positioned in the front of 4 others, 2 of which appeared quite familiar. The evil and obviously sadistic blue-haired Nymphian stood to Columbia's left, while the sword-wielder Nymphian was on her right. The other 2 individuals were unfamiliar. One of them was tall and lanky, and had a pair of green eyes, small lips, and a giant nose. The other was an average-sized Nymphian, with a mask over her mouth and nose. Her bright pink eyes showed extreme malice, though. Demeter and the others stopped about 100 feet in front of Columbia. She grinned widely and started clapping slowly.
Well, I have to admit, I didn't anticipate having to fight you and the other Nymphians at the same time. At least today won't be boring.
Today is going to be your last. We won't let you harm innocent humans with your vile plots anymore. We, the Sparkle Guardians, will punish you for all your wickedness.
Did you hear that, ladies? She's going to punish us. How many times have we heard that from other magical girl or boy teams?
Oh, I think that makes it 11 teams or so.
Spoilers! We killed them!
A sudden tickle began flickering in Demeter's chest, but she batted it away.
Don't listen to them, everyone. We're the Sparkle Guardians, and we're powerful together. We cannot lose.
Columbia chuckled as she rolled her shoulders back a couple of times. Liquid metal oozed out of her hands, and they took the forms of hammers, with hooks on the backs of them. The other Nymphians crouched a little, and the air became saturated with intent. The sword wielder summoned her weapon. The blue-haired Nymphian's hands began glowing, and the one with the mask lowered it, revealing a creepy wolf face, dripping with bright blue saliva. The tall, lanky Nymphian got taller and fatter, like they were being filled with hot air.
Let's not waste any more words. Kill them!
The Nymphians rushed forward, and for a single moment, Demeter's heart clenched tightly. Her magic buzzed within her, as if it were caught off guard. And then, all hell broke loose. Demeter willed her magic into the area, and plants shot up from the ground in front of her, whipping about in a frenzy. Zeus threw a lightning bolt and it exploded somewhere. Persephone and Poseidon surged forward, while Hades faded from view. Hestia blasted out a fireball, but stayed in the back with Iris and a still weakened Boreas.
Oh, I've been dreaming about choking you until the light from your eyes fades. Did you miss me, cutie?
Oh, yes. So did my sight.
From a distance, it appeared that Persephone was swinging at the blue-haired Nymphian, but the vile Nymphian was quite nimble and agile. Each time the scythe blade careened toward her, the Nymphian danced out of the way, just out of range. She kept sending waves of orange energy into Persephone, but there was no outward reaction yet. The vines fell apart in two and fell over, revealing Columbia. She had turned one of the hammers into an axe.
As leaders, we should fight!
A lightning bolt struck Columbia in the chest and sent her spiraling away. The large, fat Nymphian bounced up to Demeter and kicked out at her with surprising speed. Demeter dodged, but the Nymphian backflipped into the air. When the enemy got above Demeter, she fell with rapid speed. Immense force slammed into Demeter, and it felt more like a solid punch rather than someone full of hot air.
I got you! Prepare to be squished!
Cerberus Punch!
An onyx bead of light flared to life from nothingness, and it shot forward, aimed right at the Nymphian's body. As the orb of light struck, Hades came into view, and it was his fist that was bathed in black illumination. The ghostly image of a three-hounded Dotson appeared and barreled into the bloated Nymphian. She immediately bounced away as if she were a kickball. The entire time, the Nymphian screamed. Demeter rose to her feet and then summoned more barbed vines to break through the ground right beside Hades. As Hades punched the lesser Nymphian, Columbia had pounced up to him, with an axe poised to strike. Instead of hitting him, the axe bit into a thick plant vine.
Thanks!
Hades jumped forward with fiery fists and started trying to knock Columbia's head off. She only grinned as she parried her strikes and tried to counter. Demeter turned her attention to the others. Poseidon was locked in fierce combat with the sword wielder, and their weapons clanged together loudly. He blocked and parried her blade with the shaft of his trident, but when Poseidon tried to stab her with its points, she moved away or knocked the head of the trident away at the last moment. Both of them were smiling in a competitive warrior-like way. Zeus tossed another lightning bolt at the wolf-faced Nymphian, who started to grow animalistic claws on her hands. The wolf Nymphian leaned to the side, and the bolt sailed past her. It exploded against one of the stairs a moment later. The wolf pounced forward and tackled Zeus to the ground. Claws dug into their armor, and yet she had not gotten to Zeus's flesh yet. Despite the fact that Zeus kicked and punched, the wolf refused to let go. Iris landed beside them a moment later, and he struck her in the face as hard as he could, but the wolf merely bit into Zeus's shoulder. They screamed. Demeter summoned vines to dig out of the ground, and they wrapped around the wolf's throat, arms, waist, and legs. With all of her arcane might, Demeter tugged and pulled as Iris and Boreas kept punching the wolf in the face. Blood oozed out of the wound from Zeus's shoulder. Finally, however, the wolf let go and was flung from Zeus's body. Rather than get back to their feet, Zeus rolled back, and they fell unconscious. The wound was quite gruesome, with deep holes in the skin. Bone was exposed.
You're going to pay for that!
Demeter urged the vines to slam the wolf into the ground over and over and over again. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Iris and Boreas were trying to stem the bleeding, and a white-hot rage festered in Demeter. Nestled within that rage, a small glimmer of fear wiggled. On the 5th slam, the wolf stopped struggling, and on the 7th, Demeter tossed the lifeless body to the side. The wolf's body rolled several times, and then remained still. Demeter started to run toward Zeus, but then the bloated Nymphian bounced into her and knocked her down.
I'm back! Who's going to save you now?
Demeter looked up as the giant massive Nymphian bounced above her. From that vantage point, Demeter saw the Nymphian's face, and its evil grin. It started to fall toward her rapidly.
Hey! Where are you going?
Persephone's scythe rose up at an angle and dug into the bottom of the fat Nymphian's stomach. There was a brief pause as the tip of her scythe pierced the skin. And then the bloated Nymphian popped. Pieces went everywhere. Immense force blasted against Demeter, and she was thrown back a couple of feet. Demeter glanced up and saw that Persephone had also been thrown back, only it was perhaps 10 feet or so. Her eyes were glazed over, no doubt due to being so close to the body when it popped. The blue-haired Nymphian sprinted at her and leapt upon her as if she were a beanbag.
Now you're mine.
The blue-haired Nymphian's hands glowed, and she placed them on Persephone's cheeks. Instantly, Persephone writhed in anguish. Demeter started to run toward her, but then she heard Hades groan loudly. Columbia laughed as she pulled back her hammer away from the side of Hades' kneecap. He fell to the ground and then swung wildly at the villainous leader.
Oh, come on. I was expecting so much more from you, magical boy.
For a brief moment, Demeter stopped and gazed in horror. The blue-haired Nymphian was squeezing Persephone's face as the energy around her fingers shimmered with a greater intensity. Persephone's feet were thrashing about. Hades managed to block another hammer strike with his arm, but he grunted as he did so. Elsewhere, Poseidon managed to trip the sword wielder to the ground. However, he had long cuts up and down his arms, legs, and ribcage from slight slices.
Please, help the others. I'm going for Persephone.
Demeter ran forward and thrust her staff at the back of the blue-haired Nymphian's back. Unfortunately, at the last moment, the Nymphian twirled her body about, placing Persephone's body between them. Demeter caught herself before landing the blow. The blue-haired Nymphian tossed Persephone's body to the side and stood up.
Oh, there's nothing better than drinking deeply of someone's love and happiness, leaving only depression and despair behind. She powered me up, and now I'm going to kick your ass and harvest you too. The name is Ho. Remember my name.
Ho blasted sickly orange energy tendrils at Demeter, and they wiggled into her face. Her joints started to twitch and freeze up. Within the depths of her mind, Demeter heard Ho's voice.
Do you really think that Raquel is going to want to stay with you long term? You're so much older than she is, and one day she's going to dump you when the novelty wears off. You're worthless, and you don't deserve to be loved.
From the corner of her peripherals, Demeter saw the others. Hestia blocked one of the sword wielder's strikes and then planted a fireball in her chest. Boreas had knocked away Columbia with an icy tornado, and Hades was getting to his feet. Raquel was starting to stir. However, Dana was already feeling a great weakness in her knees, and she fell to them. Ho got closer, and her eyes started to glow.
You think you're really ready for that job, Dana? No. You're going to fail. You're not ready, and you're going to be an embarrassment to your company because of it. And do you know what else? You're going to fail as a Sparkle Guardian. Look around. Your team is dying, and it's all your fault.
Both Poseidon and Hestia clashed against a severely burnt sword nymphian wielder, but it was clear that Poseidon was in rough shape. Likewise, Boreas was trying to evade getting struck by Columbia, who now threw metal blades at him. Whenever Hades managed to hobble close to her, Columbia laughed as she evaded his attacks. Even his Cerberus punches. Tears welled into Demeter's eyes.
You're wrong. We're going to win somehow. We are.
No, you won't. Everyone is going to leave you, just like before. Why do you think everyone moved away? Because you don't matter. You should just let me kill you. You're worthless.
Ho reached up and cupped Demeter's face in her hands. Cold reverberations trickled into her.
Die for me.
Leave her alone!
Iris's voice boomed in Demeter's head. Judging from the way that Ho stepped back from Demeter, and the way that the evil little Nymphian held her hands over her ears, he boomed in her head too.
So, you like to torture other people mentally, do you? Well, I can blast my thoughts just like you can. Enjoy! Richard Wagner's Ride on the Valkyries!
Ho screamed and then twisted her body about. Demeter didn't hear anything, and she glanced up to Iris, who stared at the Nymphian with great focus. As Ho writhed about, Persephone got to her feet, and then she grabbed her scythe. In one foul swoop, she brought the blade around as hard as she could, catching the evil little fairy in the lower back. Ho screamed.
Take that, you mean little bitch!
Persephone twisted her body around and sent Ho flailing away in a wide arc before slamming her on the ground. The Nymphian collided with the ground with a sickening squish. Swiftly, Persephone pulled the scythe free and then dug it back in the back of Ho's neck. Demeter willed her magic into her hand and then pressed it against the floor. Vines shot up underneath the sword wielder. It was such a surprising thing that the little Nymphian gasped and looked down. The vines entangled her long enough for Poseidon to plant the tips of his trident in her chest. Columbia backflipped away from Boreas and Hades, a sneer on her face. A voice resonated from somewhere, and Columbia pulled out a black crystal from her coat pocket.
Columbia, this is Modita. The primary host body has been compromised, and we will have to proceed with Plan B.
Columbia started backstepping away from the group as the hammer in her free hand transformed into a large mass of wiggling metal tendrils. Some of them took on the brief shapes of swords, while others became axes.
The situation was worsened. Plan B is out. We're going to have to proceed with Plan C. Meet me at the Rebirth Engine.
Plan C. Understood. I will be with you soon.
Columbia pointed directly at Demeter.
This has been fun, but now it all has to end. How about you all sit tight, and I'll be back with a big surprise.
Columbia's entire body became the color of light gray liquid metal. It lost all form, became a gelatinous, gooey mass, and then slithered away up the back stairs. While a small part of her wanted to follow, there were other pressing matters. Demeter ran over to where Zeus still laid unconscious. She flowed magic into her staff and then gently tapped the ground. A small, bright green tree sprouted from the ground, and its branches had small leaves on them. Demeter plucked 3 of them and placed them on Zeus's forehead.
Take a leaf, place it on your head, and let the magic heal your wounds. Hades, Poseidon, take a couple leaves. Once we're all back on our feet, we need to regroup and then go after Columbia. Whatever surprise she has for us, it won't be good.